All right, all welcome to episode 208 of Look Out Sir, where me and Phil are going to have a general ramble because I'm in a hotel in Oslo, in Norway, no less. Phil's at home in sunny old Oxford, although you wouldn't know it to look at him, not that you can see him, but he's in a dark, dingy room, aren't you, Phil?
I know, it's mood lighting in this place.
Absolutely. He is a man of atmosphere, loves a... moody lighting setting. It's a thing of beauty.
Exactly. I am in the literal vaults of terror, trapped away.
The horror. Whereas I, by comparison, am in a tiny little hotel room in the centre of Oslo, enjoying, recording a podcast at what is now 10:30 p.m, but only 9:30 UK time. So it won't be a crazy long one this week, and also as a result you're getting a more kind of subdued version of my voice, although what I'll probably discover is that the audio quality of this is infinitely better than what I normally do, because I'm using a Mac that I have for work, and they tend to be technological whizzes when it comes to all the kind of ancillary things like voice capture and video, etc.
Yeah, quite. Well, I mean, I'm on a Mac as well, so maybe.
It's true. Yours is tired and old, Phil. You need a new one.
It is. It's covered in dust and other bits of detritus, bits of resin everywhere.
Bits of resin. The stuff that didn't make its way into your lungs.
No, exactly. No, the bits I haven't hoovered up.
Well, exactly. Or perchance found its way into your lungs and then was coughed out into the keyboard.
Yes, I mean, that is quite likely. Quite likely indeed.
It did. Anyway, as I say, this is a bit of a weird one. As you will remember from what we were saying the last time we were saying it, we've changed up the format. So, yeah, this is one of those kind of random episodes that comes as a consequence of that format, because we wanted to do it, because we wanted to, at least for the first month, kind of try our best to kind of stick the benefit of this new format, which is that we're going back to kind of doing it weekly. So me and Phil have kind of committed to the idea that we'll get to record on Wednesdays. So that's what we're doing. It just might not be what I would normally qualify as an episode, but at the end of the day, we're going to put it on the internet. It will have had the intro music. We won't do the 5-star review segment because I can't find one in my kind of beleaguered setting, but we will essentially have a general ramble, which hopefully you'll enjoy. But before that, obviously, we'll remind you to like and subscribe. Check out our Patreon. Thank you to the patrons. They always appreciate everything you do to support this fabulous show. Or at least we hope you think it's a fabulous show. We certainly do. But then again, we're quite biased. But yeah, no real particular topic. We're just going to get into a general chat. Although Phil did want to talk about Kill Team specifically.
Yes. So I had my first 2 games of Kill Team. Now, old listeners might remember us trying to talk about playing Kill Team, Dan, you and me, back in, I think it was 2021, maybe. That was when the Gallo Dark Kill Team came out. Well, so basically the 2021 edition came out, but it also featured... Well, actually, Gallo Dark came a bit later, because it started off and it was... Krieg and Orcs, not Octarius, although they should have called it Orctarius. That would have been a better pun.
It would have made more sense.
So I think initially we weren't into it, but then the following year, so it would have been 2022, I'm pretty sure that's when Gallo Dark came out. I could be wrong. And we bought one of those boxes because we wanted it for boarding actions, for 40k, but we both like the teams, so I got our BTs, you got I want to say it was Kroot. Yeah, it was Kroot. Okay.
It was Kroot. Kroot Legendaries, beautiful.
And we said we would do some Kill Team, and until today, I have not done that. But today I have, everyone. I have fulfilled my promise. So yeah, I have some thoughts about Kill Team.
That is very good news, Phil. It's such good news. I'm going to forgive you for, not allowing us to observe what we established as the formatting. I was kind of inadvertently doing the intro bit, so I was going to do like a transition noise and then get into Kill Team. But you know what? We're on it now, so it's your fault. We're going to carry on.
I mean,
So
if you
tell me,
like, you could do a transitional noise and I'll edit it back in advance. Timey-wimey style.
it just won't work. It won't work. There's no, don't start. You know, your first run of the edit. You don't want to layer in that unnecessary
Complications.
complexity. I'll do one. I'll do one just for the people who enjoy it. You know, the listeners who, you know, don't feel like it's a real lookout so unless we do a transitional noise at least once. So here it is for your listening pleasure. So yeah, Gallo Dark. It came out in 22. I'm pretty sure of that, or maybe it was. Was it not 23? Wasn't it part of the final run of ninth edition? No, you're right. It was late 22.
Well, yeah,
wasn't
it was the tail end of 22, and then went into 23, which I guess is because that was Arcs of Omen.
Yes, and then it was called. Because it was called Gallodark, which was the name of the series that they were doing. So they did a series of releases. So they did was it Necrons versus Lisa Votan was also one of those Gallodark releases.
Possibly. I want to say one of them was... No, because there was definitely a Nightbringers...
There was like 3 box sets, I seem to remember. But the actual thing they called it... in 40k parlance was Boarding Actions, right?
Yeah,
that's what
Boarding Actions was the 40k game that required 2 box sets of whatever the Gallodark, yeah, because it's on a slightly bigger board. So yeah, so we've got that, and again, we've been meaning to play some Boarding Actions. I've played plenty of Boarding Actions, but we haven't played it together.
I have played Boarding Actions. It is really fun, and I would very much like to do more Boarding Actions. I'm genuinely on a bit of a tear at the moment with enjoying 40k in a general sense, and I think like Boarding Actions and 1,000 point games of 40k are where it's at for me at the moment. I think that stuff's really kind of triggering some really interesting kind of gameplay dynamics and fun kind of creative concepts, at least as it concerns kind of list building and other bits and pieces. Yeah, I find those 2 systems do really ignite a real kind of enthusiasm in me. But I'm also obviously still quite heavily invested in AOS at the moment, but we can talk about that later. But yeah, no, man, I mean, I think, I'd be definitely up for doing some more Boarding Actions because it's 500 points, right? Boarding
so
actions.
It's a fair bit smaller. And there's like quite heavy restrictions. So basically it's no vehicles whatsoever, just infantry. And then even then, I think you're still... you have specific army lists that you can pick in terms of the units. So your choices are somewhat restricted. And there's a preset number of detachments, much like the sort of regular detachments that you get in 40k. And yeah, some of them unlock different units. So there's a Terminator-specific detachment.
Yes.
And that's the only way you can take Terminators, but your whole... army is just basically Terminators, and then Custodies,
which is what you would want, right? Like that's basically what you're looking for.
That feels very thematic. Yes, yeah. Going into a space hulk. Yeah. So Custodies have a similar one, where you could just have Custodies or Custodies with sisters. I think there's one that maybe leans into just sisters. I can't quite remember, but yeah, there's a few different options. And yeah, every army's got a few different themed lists like that. Some are definitely better than others. I think some might have a few mechanical issues here and there, but I don't think it's that kind of game where it's play tested enough that it's got the same sort of fine-tuned balance that the standard 40k has. But I feel like it's such a more casual mindset, and the games are so sort of low stakes because they're 500 points, so you can probably do one in like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and maybe get a couple of games in an evening.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the thing I've noticed with Boarding Actions, at least, is that it does definitely offer a lot of really interesting tactical challenges, but it does also favor very particular types of armies because of the choke points, right? Like there are certain units that are able to perform well in those kind of close quarters, and it does become, highly numerous kind of high damage units definitely have more advantageous opportunities. I feel like running things like Custodians or Terminators is actually quite hard in that setting to do super well. But yeah,
I think
ultimately,
Terminators get a slight advantage. So Custodes, so there's a general action that most sort of not baseline. What's it? Effectively, it's like your standard battle line. That's your battle line units can do this action that makes an objective sticky. So it's yours until your opponent takes it off you. Custodes have that specifically removed from them, with the exception of Sisters. So when I run my Thunder Warriors as Custodes, I can't hold objectives unless I'm physically on it. And when at 500 points, you've maybe got 6 models at best. That's quite difficult sometimes. Although once I get into combat, I am murking whatever is nearby. So that's normally not a problem. And, you know, the corridors and the windy nature of it means you can quite often minimize how much you're being shot at. So combat can be quite favored, especially if you can get abilities that can move maybe further than you would otherwise. Although a lot of things like the Blade Champions Advance and Charge, I think that's been taken off because it's a sort of too powerful in this sort of size of game. So certain units do have abilities removed from them. Whereas, so they can't do actions to secure objectives. However, Terminators specifically have that given to them, even though they're not battle line. And I'm like, so Terminators are Custodes equivalent, but they've got so many more benefits given to them just because they're Space Marines, I guess. Whereas it feels like Custodes is specifically done to make you take Sisters with them. So if you're not doing that, you're kind of penalizing yourself, which isn't how I'm playing them, just because of the theme of my army. So yeah, that's one thing I did specifically note, where it's like an equivalent has definitely a better option for it. So yeah, low model count is quite hard to play just due to the positioning, and then Custodes is even worse because they can't just like make it sticky and then run off into your opponent's face, which, you know, maybe that would be too strong, to be honest. But as soon as you lose 1 or 2 guys, you're really struggling for options to be on the objectives.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, admittedly, there are nuances in the way that the objectives are a bit different, aren't they? Because they're sort of just areas, I suppose. I mean,
they're much, so they're the same size, but the area that you've got to be within is much smaller. So it's like an inch from the objective, not 3 inches. So it's much more close confines in terms of how you can hold them. And I'm just trying to think if there's any of the missions that I played where you got to do actions on them. I don't think there are, but you've also got to do actions for like opening doors and stuff. And that changed quite differently from the previous edition, I believe. So in the previous edition, effectively in your movement phase, you can do an action to open a door. So you can move up to a door with one guy, open it up, because everyone does one model activation at a time. Rather than big units. So you could move up to a door, open it up, and then when it's your turn again, one of your buddies can move up and go through that door because it's now opened for him. Whereas in this edition, I believe, you do all your movement and then you activate the doors. So you can't open doors for people. So the doors become real sort of choke points for moving through the table, basically.
But it's super interesting as a game system, though, and I do love the fact that GW, even though they're not necessarily as supportive of these systems as they have been in previous editions, are still doing things to, you know, layer in that additional, you know, ways to play and stuff. And, you know, obviously the barrier to entry for boarding actions as a system is quite high because you do need to buy, you know, 250, 300 quid's worth of terrain, which I'm guessing you can't even buy.
I don't know if
anymore.
it's that much. It used to be, I thought it was like around 120 because they did sell it as just a box, and it was still available last time I checked, but that was several months ago.
So you only need one boarding action box?
Yeah, so boarding action box is specifically the 40k one, which is double the kill team one.
So it's 135 clams.
Oh, okay. So and the fact that it's still being sold when basically boarding actions, when terrain in 40k in general is just hard to get hold of normally for a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I can't lie. I probably will pick it up just for the fact that it's probably going to have an insane resale value in like 10 years time. Just like all
Oh, the terrain
40K.
pieces, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously, it's also worth highlighting that the terrain itself, though, is definitely requiring of a lot of additional effort, shall we say, in terms of modeling. It isn't a plug and play system like it's advertised.
There's a lot of mold line removals from it, especially basically how the walls clip into the column. So basically, the terrain is built with flat walls, columns that basically create the T junction or crossroads for the walls to join to. Sometimes columns are on their own in half pieces, so you can attach two together to form a single column, or you attach a half piece of a column to a wall that has half a column pre-attached. And there's a variety of combinations of lengths of wall with one or two columns on them. Sometimes the wall pieces are basically one room lengths, or up to I think 3 room lengths in terms of the number of columns in them. And you have to, they're very tightly fit when the slots go into the columns, which basically form the board basically in the structural integrity. Those are super tight, so you've got to shave off all the mold lines, and then you've also got to do that for the caps that go on top of the columns to hold the walls and the columns together as well. So all of that requires mold line removal or sanding quite vigorously to do. And then the other thing is, once you've done all that and you've got it working, when it comes to setting up a table, quite often every mission has a different map, and that has a layout, and you're looking at a layout which has these numbered wall sections like A1, B2, A5, whatever it might be, and you've got to try and correspond the parts which aren't clearly labelled unless you mock them up yourself, which you could either do like I've scratched onto the bottom of each piece, so it's on the underside what the letter and number is. Once it's painted, I will have that somewhere as a transfer on the wall as like a stencil, so it will be easy to tell. It takes you like half an hour to basically create this table if you're trying to follow the mission plan, which is obviously what's intended. And I've done that before when my buddy George has come over. We've had some games of boarding actions. We will play one game and then we go, cool, let's do a second game. And we basically just decide to keep with the same table layout because it will take half an hour to disassemble it all and then reconfigure it. And I would hate to be doing that with a painted set because you're physically having to, be gripping stuff and the friction will probably knock loads of paint off. So, it's not something I would advise. I'm sort of seriously considering pre-gluing rooms together and having almost like a Necromunda style tile where it's all just preset out and I can just easily create something. Now they won't match the maps that they're given, and it's worth noting that the new Kill Team book actually does support Gallo Dark and comes with like a couple of missions and map layouts pre-made, so that's all really good. But yeah, if I do that system, it won't match up. So it depends on what do I want. The convenience and being able to shuffle around some rooms to make new tiles really easily. Or do I want to play the mission exactly as it's being created?
Well, indeed. I mean, I think in all probability, I guess obviously you're going to want to do a bit. It's very dependent. I would assume you'd want to do both type of things, but it's all going to come down to like what you're kind of looking for. Because I guess for so many people, boarding actions is going to be such a nice kind of change of pace. The idea that you would only have, maybe 4 board segments with 4, distinct layouts that could, be rotated or reorientated to produce a number of variables. Maybe that's enough for you because you just go, cool, we're going to play boarding actions, therefore bish bash bosh, here it is, and this is the mission. Don't worry about it being the thing exactly as it is in the book, because ultimately these were suggestions. It's, it's not, ultimately it's not the only way to play it. So I think that's the way to go. Would be my assessment,
Yeah,
would be just
I
probably abandon any kind of desire to do the fixed ones. I was going to say as well, if you don't do the actual level of sanding and the level of mold line removal that Phil was talking about, basically the problem with that terrain is it just boomerangs. It just literally, like, as the pieces go in, it just becomes
so it doesn't
increasingly
lay flat quite often if you're not careful, if they're too tight. And also you got to think, once you've painted it, if you don't mask up the connection pieces and the bits that they go in, actually no, the bits they go in you have to paint, because they're not always going to have a connection piece in. If you don't mask up the connection pieces, which are always hidden, then there's going to be paint on that, and there's going to be paint on the connection piece that it goes into, and that sort of microscopic amount of paint will be enough that it won't fit. Or if you do, you are just tearing that paint off after like 1 or 2 uses, because it is so precision tight already. They didn't actually put in any tolerance for give. And yeah, the walls don't sit flush either if you're not careful.
Yeah. I'm having a funny moment where I feel like we've had this exact conversation in a previous podcast.
I mean, we may well have, because we probably talked about boarding actions and the terrain previously, but it's sort of worth going over and sort of talking about the foibles of that.
Totally.
Terrain.
I'm not suggesting we shouldn't talk about it. I'm just saying that I think we have talked about it. So yeah, dear listener, if you feel like you've heard this before, why not spicy and tell us where we talked about it in the past, and we can do a compare and contrast on that sort of things. Plus, also, weren't we talking about Kill Team originally? How did we get on the boarding action?
Talked about Gallo Dock basically, because that was when we said we were going to play Kill Team. But yeah, the new Kill Team, it does have ways to play with Gallo Dock, which is exciting to see. It does have ways to play on the Volcrus terrain set, which is the current one in existence. It also has, I believe it's got some co-op play, which is the Joint Ops mission pack. I haven't read the rules for that yet, but that sounds interesting. And then there's some multiplayer missions as well. When I'm on missions, I'll talk about one of the disappointments that I've got in this book. Noting, so I went out and I specifically bought the standalone book, because my friend George was like, I was trying to get him to play Crusade. He said, brilliant. But he was like, can we also do some Kill Team? So I was like, okay. I happened to be in Element Games in London, and they had the standalone book. So I was like, I've read the core rules that are the free ones on the Kill Team app. That is okay, but it doesn't actually give you all the rules. It's just the basic, this is how you move, this is how you shoot. Doesn't properly explain all of cover, I don't think, or things like vantage points, which is being higher up, and it doesn't have the more exotic rules like actions or even missions or anything like that. So I was like, I'll pick this up. It's a nice hardbound book, comes with a set of the generic tokens that you need, which also include the measurements, which also is interestingly in inches this time, whereas before we had the mad thing of it was a square, it was a circle, and it was a triangle, and who knows what that actually meant. But basically it means 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, but you also get a 6-inch stick, which must have also had maybe a corresponding shape in the previous edition. But yeah, so you get a basic mission in this, which is you can play Dawn of War or Hammer and Anvil for 40k balances in terms of the mission sort of map per se. And then you get crit ops, which is basically your primary. You get 3 different ones that you can do, which is basically kill points and which is kill op. And then crit op is again a primary type of mission, which is basically 3 different things which involve doing an action on an objective to somehow score you points. So one of them, the first one is secure, which is basically you make your objective sticky, and then you cumulatively score points at the end of your turn. So that one's quite straightforward. And then there's another one, which is the second game we did, which was loot. So to score points on an objective, you have to do a loot action on that objective, and that will score you a victory point for just that turn. So every turn, other than the first, because you can't do it then, much like 40k, you can do a loot action on that objective. So you get a very limited choice of actual missions with a standard table that isn't Gallo Dark. And then it basically says go get the what was it called, the approved ops mission pack, which is a deck of cards which is probably around about £20, which comes with pre-made maps with terrain layouts and different missions, primaries and secondaries that you can do.
Blimey.
So
many variables.
Even though we're not talking about the rules, the actual number of games you can sort of play out of the bat with your £30 book that I've spent is disappointingly low.
Well, normally you only really get one, don't you? I mean,
it's sort of, yeah. I mean, it's basically one, but you roll a d3 to determine your one of two deployments, and you roll a d3 for your 3 different objectives that you can do. Is it?
Yeah,
is
but
it,
that's not dramatically. Sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, is that one mission with some variance, or is it, effectively 9 different missions if you factor in every table layout? But the way the objectives are placed is the same in every map, so it feels very samey just after playing 2 games. Yeah. So, for example, with the mission, you have one objective on the center line of the map going across, and then you have each of you place another objective in your territory, which is your table half, 3 inches from that center line. So all the objectives are basically in the middle of the map in some fashion. Right. So regardless of map layout and regardless of what mission you're playing, just by the nature of how the objectives are sort of all positioned roughly in the same way, it felt a bit samey, and that was just playing 2 missions.
Yeah. Kill Team's weird, isn't it, I suppose, because, like, in the original sense, Kill Team was a game that obviously was very hobby first, very hobby centric, in the sense that the idea is that collectors, hobbyists with vast ranges of miniatures could build these, bespoke, custom, hodgepodge units that essentially became kill teams, right? Like it was a band of misfits, if you will, or a selection of different miniatures that were, as I say, built from a multitude of different kits. Whereas now, obviously, it's become very sterilized, the idea that, people buy kill teams and they're, able to bring to life different specialists and different ideas with them, but ultimately it's done in a very kind of purpose-built way, and again that kind of, I suppose, rings true a lot with how they've kind of constructed or approached gameplay as well, or mission structure, which is to try and streamline or simplify it or standardize it, I guess, which is interesting.
I think so. And it was interesting because I had a look through, prior to this, I looked through the 2021 Kill Team book that I had, because I've got that plus the, in fact, it's just slightly out of reach, but I was going to look at the others. I want to say it was like Soul Shackle or something, and the Gallo Dark, Into the Dark. Anyway, so in the first book, it was really interesting because you look through that, and bar the Krieg and the commandos, the Orc commandos, every other kill team is a generic 40k squad that you would just make by buying one or multiple kits to make a team. So for guardsmen, yes, you could just buy a box of guardsmen, but actually, if you had maybe access to, I don't think I had access to heavy weapon teams, but maybe you need a sniper, or you wanted a particular specialist weapon that isn't in that standard box. You might have to cherry pick models from other units, and certainly maybe guardsmen's a poor example, but possibly some of the Space Marine ones, or maybe like Tau, for example, you probably had to build that up out of more than just one kit. So it's great for a hobbyist that's got a pre-established army, and you just want to buy the rules, and then you want to create your kill team from your existing collection. Or you're someone that's happy to, kit bash or buy different stuff. Whereas now the general direction of kill team is, as you say, prescribed boxes. This is what comes in the box. There is sort of very little choice. There are some in terms of weapon options, but basically what you on average are doing is choosing, let's say, 10 operatives out of your team, your roster, which is the cards that you could effectively select to make up your operatives. There might be more, but you're picking 10 within your selection. And so one of them might be a gunner with a specialist weapon, but that's a specific specialist weapon on that data sheet. So it might be, for example, Kazakin, which is what I had. I had a sergeant, and he actually does have different weapon options. So he can have like a power sword and a plasma pistol. He can have a las pistol and a chainsword. But he can't have any combat weapon with any pistol option. They're prescribed like loadouts, much like in 40k, because I think it's based on how the kit can actually be built. And then you might go, cool, you can have up to 3 or 4 gunners, but one of them has to be, well, it doesn't have to be a flamer, but each one has to be different. So you could take a flamer, a plasma, a grenade launcher, hotshot volley gun, but you can't take 4 hotshot volley guns, for example. And then you can have generic troopers, and they're the only ones that you can normally take multiples of, but they're just guys with las guns, and that's it. There's no other weapon choice with it. Whereas in previous editions, you're effectively taking 10 guardsmen, and you're giving each one unique loadouts, and you're probably paying points for all of those unit options. So you know, cool, I'm going to give this guy grenades, I'm going to give this guy a plasma pistol, I'm going to give this guy a specialist weapon or whatever. So the sort of mental attitude that you go into it feels very different. Now I feel like Kill Team currently has less hobby choice because you have a prescribed set of things you can have that are basically what comes in the box. But it's very quick to build a team because it literally says you get 1 sergeant and 9 dudes, and here is your selection of 9 dudes, which is basically the different weapon options. Like, that is it. There's no mucking around with points. There's no modifying each person to have a particular war gear choice or anything like that. So it's less choice, but it's sort of much simpler, I would say, to get started.
Yeah. And not necessarily a bad thing, right? Like, I think that's the thing. Like, I don't necessarily feel like it's awful to have that standardization. I just think it just obviously has changed what the ethos of the game system is. But again, I mean, in a way, it's cool that it acts as a sort of semi introduction into Warhammer 40,000, a potential lower barrier to entry. Although how accurate that actual statement is in practice may not actually prove to be completely correct, because ultimately what you're doing when you're playing Kill Team is you're playing a very different game, at least, from a moment to moment rules perspective, than when you're playing 40k. And I always used to feel like that was one of the things that Kill Team did better in the past, was it was derivative of Warhammer 40,000, maintained and upheld systems and mechanics and commonalities. Like you were learning a common language and understanding, like, core principles that would then kind of bleed into the main, Warhammer 40,000 tabletop battle game. And I think that's the interesting thing with Kill Team now. It's very much in its own lane, and there's obviously a hugely dedicated fan base that love it for what it is. I'm just stating that what it is today is evidently quite different from what it was in the past. But then, that's universally true of so many things, right? But yeah, I don't. The thing that I dislike about the way the Kill Team stuff works is that you end up with these really weird release cycles and these really weird situations where GW kind of consistently kind of put stuff out into Kill Team and then they end up porting it over into 40k, and it never really feels very well integrated. Like those units always feel a bit kind of odd, and we're ending up in a system now where you're introducing units like, say, Elder Corsairs into the Eldari army, and that unit is, a mixture of all sorts of nonsense. And in a way, I kind of feel like they definitely need to do more to try and manage that transition. But other than that, I'm kind of all right with the way the Kill Team's gone. I enjoy the game. Like, I mean, I didn't play or haven't played new Kill Team. I have played old Kill Team, and I found it to be really enjoyable as a game. I think they've done well with it, conceptually at least. But I think, yeah, for me, it just doesn't quite scratch the itch. But I think that's mostly because yeah, you don't really have very many opportunities to be creative with it. Back in the day, Kill Team felt quite exhilarating and fun and interesting, where it was like, oh, I've got some howling banshees, I've got some striking scorpions, I've got some fire dragons. I'm going to take one of each of those, and a few guardians and a ranger, and I'm going to build my ensemble cast of Eldari characters that will make up my Kill Team, and that's going to be fun and themed to what I want. And I can disseminate, that's the wrong word. I can decide who, gets to be the specialist, who gets buffed in different ways, so I can add a lot more kind of personality onto those characters. Whereas now it is very much a case of like, if I want to play Eldari in Kill Team, I can either pick up the Drakari box or I can pick up the Corsairs box. Those are kind of your options now. So it's a little less compelling for someone like myself who probably likes Kill Team from the perspective of creating more of a fun thematic. Well, not even necessarily thematic, because I would say they're quite thematic now, but just a fun, interesting sort of thing. But that's my thing, is like, the thing that weirds me out with it is, the Rattlings, which are a cool guard unit, have been introduced as a Kill Team. They're not a Warhammer 40,000 unit, they're a Kill Team unit. You can use them in Warhammer 40,000, but now they've got all this extra gubbins and weird guff that you're like, well, it becomes kind of odd. There's complexity, I
I
find.
sort of feel like some of that needs to be taken out of the 40k game. So Rattlings have always been in 40k before even Kill Team, but they were just 10 guys with sniper rifles, and that was your only option. Now they're 10 guys. One of them's got like some demolition. One of them's making a sandwich. One of them's got a little dog with him. And all of those things, according to Games Workshop, need to have rules because they're on the model, which sort of makes sense, but it doesn't work particularly in my mind when 40k is a massed battle game and there's almost too much variance within those units. And it's like, those units make sense when they're guardsmen and they're rank and file and they've all pretty much got the same weapon, bar what used to be like one or two specialist weapons and maybe your sergeant. But now it's like, cool, I can have almost like 3 or 4 different specialist weapons. Like, to me, Orc Commandos were the sort of perfect marry between the two systems because they always existed in 40k. They're meant to be like a specialist unit that is literally a Kill Team, and because they're commandos, right? But then they work perfectly in Kill Team. But I sort of feel like some units are too 40k for Kill Team, and then most are too Kill Team for 40k. And it's almost like when it's in 40k, you maybe need to take away the tokens, the little robots and the dogs, which just seem to be coming everywhere.
I'm genuinely at the end of my tether with the dogs and the robots and the little
the
goopers. Like I
helper
just, I'm
units. It was sort of
I'm
fun once in a while, but now it just feels like everything's got one.
yeah. It's just again, it's that thing, isn't it? It was special because it was
Rare.
rare. Whereas now it's like, oh, everyone's got them. Like when they first did it for the, I can't remember what the first unit that got the dog was. I mean, I think it was the Rogue Trader, wasn't it?
Ages ago, yeah, they had a
Yeah,
dog that was in the prior kill team. Uh,
yeah.
in
They
the
were called the
current
Star
edition,
something.
it was the bomb squig, I think, was on the all commandos. But yeah,
Oh yeah, and then they added the dog to the Arbites or BTs or whatever you call it, and yeah, they constantly just chucking dogs at things and cool little cutesy little characters. I mean, I remember when Yvraine came out at the turn of
with the cats.
everybody, yeah, with a little cat, and people were really into that and stuff. And that's the thing with it, right? Like I think, and obviously the Nurglings during like early 8th edition really took off, and yeah, it has become an interesting kind of part of it. But in my opinion, I mean, it's not that I'm joyless. I just sort of get to a point where it's like, if everyone's got them, it's not special. Like, I understand why, Nurglings are fun, and I understand why, Snotlings or Squigs are fun. And to be honest with you, as far as I'm concerned, it's almost like, can we just leave it to them? Can it just be
Yeah,
the orcs and the Nurgle
have the comedy
have
small
those
stuff.
quirky,
Mm.
yeah, and even Zinch had a few funny little units like the Brimstone Horrors, for
Mm.
example. They had a certain kind of cutesy little kind of weirdness to them. So I don't, again, I don't despise the fact that they exist, but then they're a unit in their own right, and I don't think they were doing Brimstone Horrors with the express idea of doing something comical. I think they did it because they're
They were just in a setting before,
flames
yeah,
and
flamey fit with the vibes.
yeah,
Yeah, I sort of feel like it.
yeah.
Yeah, if it feels like they're often not very grim dark,
Oh, the
because
woman got grimdark.
ultimately, like dogs are cute. Whereas if people go back to, I believe the very first pet that I can think of was from Forge Worlds. Event exclusive enforcer model, which was I believe it was, I guess it was prior to Necromunda, but it was like an enforcer, so it was a bit like our BTs, but or
That
the
must be
enforcers in
Necromunda then.
Necromunda, but this was prior to Necromunda, so this was like maybe 2008, 2010 sort of time, and it was a guy who had a pouch, like a shock maul, I think, and a cyber mastiff, and so it was like part dog, part robot, but he was like this mangy, decrepit, but slightly scary looking thing, and I'm like, that's what animals should look like in 40k. Like they shouldn't look nice or cute. They should be kind of a bit grim and gross. And I'm not
Mm,
saying it's I'm you say being the fun sponge here and going, no, it's everything's got to be serious. But it
yeah.
is interesting because those models are a very sort of tonal shift, I think, in the setting, because I don't think you could paint up that cute pug dog from the Rattlings team anything other than cutesy. It doesn't reek grim dark to me whatsoever.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, because when you look at, like, say, the Necromunda range and you look at some of the kind of pets or familiars that have kind of been featured alongside, characters within that world, there's,
There
I
was
can't
like the
remember the name of it now.
crocodile. Like a lot of
Was it a
them were like
crocodile?
beasts that you can get in Necromunda. So there was like a crocodile. There were bomb rats. They're all quite grim, dark, and quite, dare I say, serious.
Right.
I don't think there was any cute cats or anything. There's it was actually a heresy one, which was the sort of cybernetic Magos lady, and it was like a little, almost like a they're called the Dark Ones, like just like a hooded, robed dude, but he was absolutely miniature. He was kind of cool, a little bit cute, but still quite grim dark about him. He wasn't a pet. He was just like a little person, I guess.
Yeah, because you had like
Hooded.
the Beastmaster minis for the Outlander guys that have like really mad looking monsters with them in the forms of like, snaky worm creatures or those big kind of like fleshy mad
Oh,
things.
yeah,
And
the big killer worm things. Yeah.
yeah, so that's the thing. I think they do a better job on the whole of trying to kind of, portray the companion animals in a more kind of compelling
Well,
fashion
they're
in that
they're very
space.
alien, and I think the problem with the kind of cute pets is they quite often just look too modern, like into our current sort of society. Whereas I like stuff that's not going to remind me of, present day because it is in a far future. And I've said this to you before. It's like I don't think we should be having horses in 40k because horses shouldn't
Mm,
be horses. They should either be extinct or they should have evolved or mutated. So they should. That's why the sort of the slight camels of the Death Riders looked really good because,
mm,
especially the original Forge World ones, is they sort of look like horses, but they really weren't whatsoever.
yeah. Yeah, I sort of love that as well with the various mounted cavalry units for the Mechanicus, the idea that they're these sorts of like strange, like dog-esque creatures, and obviously they're
It was Cerberus
mostly, if not
hounds, yeah.
well, yeah, I mean, and they're mostly mechanical, but they're actually, servitors essentially. So it's just some poor bugger chopped up in interesting ways, which is always interesting. But yeah, I think that's the thing. Like, I think when it comes to the because to me it's interesting, right? Because like one of the things that I quite enjoy and has been really interesting is seeing how these things are handled on the other side of the hobby within the AOS realm. And what goes on with AOS is super inconsistent because they've got their two different systems, right? They've got the Warcry system, which is effectively run aground. I think Warcry is effectively
I
dead now.
think I saw someone mention that it's basically been at least 9 months since anything's been done with it, and it was interesting because they were also speculating. This is something I thought that basically the new Caldron Overlord miniatures that they released, the team, like the squad of, is it like 4 or 5 people? They're like a special sort of
Mm,
company that they are
yeah.
basically would have been a Warcry warband, and they've just, and clearly Warcry is not a thing, so they've just ported it over to AOS, which sort of makes sense because every guy's got like a, or girl, because it's both of them in this, and they've both got like every model's got a different weapon, which does happen in AOS, but is also quite terrible when that happens in AOS because you've suddenly got to stop and roll a bunch of dice. Although actually saying that in this edition, they have sort of minimized that quite a lot, and they've just gone, yeah, it's just all a gun.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are instances, though, if you are playing Cadron Overlords, some of the Cadron Overlords units do have a mix of
Yeah,
guns, but at most it's like
the
three
Thunderic,
guns.
the Thunderers basically, which was basically an
Yeah,
array of
so they're-
different weapons. That
yeah, so they've got like one scatter shot, one rifle,
Yeah, it's like a
one
cannon and
blunderbuss,
stuff.
or
Yeah,
whatever it
there's
is.
all sorts of ones in
Yeah.
there. So I didn't know if they'd streamlined that or not, but
No, no, they still have three different weapons profiles for those, but or at least they do currently. Obviously, they've got a new battle tome on the horizon. But yeah, that's the thing that's quite interesting about the way that they do it in the AOS space because it's relatively inconsistent, right? So you've got things like the Crawl Boys, Monster Killers, who are very kind of quintessential units for Crawl Boys. So they like feature, in the rare instances that you see Crawl Boys armies, you will see the Monster Killers being kind of prominently featured. Where it's interesting is in the underworld side of things, because there's now this moment in time where there's this huge level of inconsistency in terms of who still has access to Underworld's teams and who does
Yeah,
not.
because a lot of them have gone to Legends, and I feel like they're at least a bit more upfront and honest about that now, where they're like, yeah, cool, they'll be valid for like a year or two, then they go to Legends, then they're still playable for maybe another year no, they're playable in match play, then they go to Legends, where, yeah, if you're not playing a competitive event, you can still technically play them.
Yeah, there's been the interesting thing, right? Because obviously there's been a lot of instances now in Age of Sigmar where they've put out spearheads, and those spearheads have prominently featured Underworld's warbands, or in some instances both Underworld's warbands and Warcry teams as well. So like the Seraphon one is quite interesting, because the Seraphon one features both a Warcry warband and
Yeah,
a
it's like the array
a
of the
Underworld.
array of skinks, because they haven't really done many. I don't think they've done like proper like new skink minis for AOS. They've just given us the Underworlds and Warcry versions.
Yeah, and it's interesting though, right? Because like Nighthaunt still have access to a few different, like, Nighthaunt do have a
There's I want to say
Warcry.
it's like Pyroblasters, it's something like that. It's the flame ones, which came out in Warcry like
Oh,
maybe a year or two ago, and it's like I've still not picked them up purely because I'm like, well, chances are in a year's time they're going to be Legends, and I won't be able to play them in AOS anyway. Because I basically last year painted the Underworld's warband, and then the new edition came around, and then they made it Legends then. So it's like, cool, I got to
wow.
play that maybe one time for an event, and that's it. Although in the future event I'm probably going to run the main guy with the big sword. He's like the Executioner. I'm going to run him just as a Lord Executioner model, because he's on the same size
Mm.
base, which is really just a coincidence and good fortune for me.
Well, indeed. I mean, they may have considered doing that on purpose.
Well,
You
I
don't
mean,
know.
maybe. Yeah, he's a big boy, that floaty ghost.
But it's interesting, right? Because you end up in this weird scenario where you've got like armies, or people that have got quite a. It's just a weird, inconsistent mixture, right? So, like for example, right now, if you were to pick up Underworld's start collecting box set or whatever it is, the initial kind of starter set, it features Stormcast Eternals and Skaven, but the Skaven um, Underworld's team cannot be ran in a Skaven army. But I think maybe the Stormcast can, or they. I mean, yeah, maybe they just work as meaningful proxies. But yeah, they definitely had this weird mixture where it's been really inconsistent as towards whether or not a kill team is allowed or not, as it were. So that's been super interesting to kind of watch unfold. The only thing that kind of irks me in the moment is they've still not officially re-released the Skaven.
Oh, the Underworld team from ages ago. I think that one was.
Yeah. Well, they were called like Skittershank or something, I think they were
Yeah.
called. And the thing that's weird about that one is because basically what I love about it is what they've basically done. They've done these like old school releases, so you can get the Death box set, and in that you got your Night
Mm.
Haunts, you got your Bone Reapers, you got your Flesh Eater Courts, and you got your Soul like Gravelord. So it's like cool, 4 different Death factions, which to be fair is every Death faction, right? Order's a little bit less compelling, because in that case you just get Ram Lords, um, Sylvaneth, cities. Is that cities? Yeah, cities, and Cadron Overlords. But yeah, because there's now obviously 5 different chaos things. They only
Did
represent.
Skaven not make the cut then?
They did not know. So they've got in the chaos space, they've got basically some kind of Zinch thing, some kind of Hidenites thing, some kind of generic Warriors of Chaos thing, or rather, sorry, Slayers of Darkness thing. and then one at the top that I'm not even really sure what it is.
Sure, it's Nurgle.
Oh, that's pretty actually. Oh, it's a corny one.
Yeah.
Yes, the cornies. Oh, that's actually
So no Nurgle one then.
No, yeah. Well, again, Nurgle have a set currently that is available to purchase, and they've got Grandfather's Gardeners. Um, I don't think Grandfather's Gardeners currently is supported in the main game. So yeah, like I say, it's just weirdly inconsistent there. So in a way, with all going around the houses, the way they do it in Warhammer 40,000 in some respects is kind of nice because at least they consistently support the stuff. At least they kind of go, here's I'm pretty
I
sure.
sort of feel like for now that's the case, maybe not in the future, because ultimately what Kill Team's been doing is feeding mainline 40k units via Kill Team. Kazakin's mainline 40k unit, Krieg mainline 40k unit, even though you could argue they weren't a pre-existing unit in the current game. Neither was Kazakin, but both have existed in 40k in different forms, like your was it the Striking Scorpions mainline Elder unit, or Commandos mainline 40k unit. So basically it's a mixture of
all Crankbusters, same thing.
The
right?
majority of them feel like they're 40k units, and they just go, cool, here's a couple of extra characters or interesting like special weapons and dogs or whatever thrown into the mix. And there's only maybe one or two that genuinely feel like real curveball units, maybe like Corsairs, because they're not the main sort of faction that you would.
Corsairs were. I was really happy to see Corsairs. I think people may remember back in the day, I was saying quite consistently that I would have really loved to have seen Corsairs brought to life.
Completely.
I think the thing that was really interesting with that Corsairs kit was the fact that they also offered like 3 different construction variables, so you could build them all as ranged fighters, so you could give them all ranged weapons, you could do them all as close combat, or you could do them as the Kill Team and incorporate all the different specialisms into them. So that kit was
our BTs did that as well. So you could all take them as just like dudes with shotguns or the shock maul and shield. And then there was a bunch of specialist ones with like bombs and things like that. So that one was an interesting. Interestingly, like that one doesn't really fit into the sort of 40k game, I would say. And like the Sanctifiers, which are the priests, I guess maybe like the Servitor Squad, which was quite a new one, where they're sort of adjacent to the setting like our BTs. They have been in the game to an extent, but they don't really quite plug and play into a specific army. But yeah, I feel like at the moment they're doing it quite well, where it lives in Kill Team. Ultimately, most people just buy it probably for 40k, and you can buy with confidence knowing that it's going to stick around in your codex for probably years and years to come. That's not guaranteed, but it feels like that's the case. I was going to say the specific Kill Team that came in the starter set, which was the generic it wasn't even the Angels of Death one, but it's the Space Marine squad that's like a captain, assault intercessor, a Gravis guy with the no, not the Space Marine heroes. It's just a mixture of different like armor marks. So you can't take that.
So that was originally a Space Marine Heroes release.
Because they're Primaris, though. You sure?
Correct. Yeah. So it was the last wave of Space Marine Heroes. So they did the Tactical Marines, the Terminators, the Death Guard.
Because I remember the Death Guard were definitely the Heroes one. I didn't realize.
Yeah, so both sides of that were different heroes.
Yeah. It's coming back to me. You're right. So those don't really exist as a 40k team. You can't take that unit as a team because it's always different marks of armor, unless of course you were playing Deathwatch, because you could take it as a kill team, I guess. But with those, they're just, I guess you go, well, these are just cool alternative sculpts for that I would just plug into an existing unit.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the whole, they've done some good, really unique releases within Kill Team. I love the fact that they did the Beastmen. I felt like the Beastmen were really, really well appreciated in that space. Not that I imagine they're a super popular team, but I love the fact they did the Beastmen. I love the fact that they did the Corsairs. I really like the Inquisitorial Henchmen
Yeah,
stuff that
they're
they
very
added. I
cool.
think that's really cool. I really liked the early Kroot. I thought they were cool. The BTs were super awesome as well. They've had a few kind of misses. I didn't like the what were they called now? The corn
Oh,
cultist with chicken legs.
yeah, it's not the Blooded. That's the other Chaos team.
No, it's like the warmongers or something
Yes,
like that.
I
I can't remember.
know the one. I also weren't a huge fan on the Halfkin Salvager team because that was
Oh
just
God, well, no, I was about to say the ones where Kill Team really kind of fails to hit the mark are things like the Striking Scorpions that aren't called Striking Scorpions. They're called like Blades of Corn or something. Sorry, not Blades of Corn, Blades of Cane.
Blades of Cain. Yeah,
Uh,
you're right.
yeah, so like Striking Scorpions, like it's just a generic Striking Scorpion release. It didn't need to be a Kill Team, but it is. And it's the same with like the Necron Kill Team, if I remember, was pretty mid because it was just basically an Immortals box set with maybe a couple of extra little bits added in to kind of customize it. Same with the Leagues of Votan, same with the Drukhari, I feel.
Well, a lot of
The
them were. So
Infiltrator.
we didn't mention it, but a lot of them are just a standard box set being re-released with a sort of an extra sprue of like war gear and head options, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what, though, it's funny, isn't it? Because if I remember correctly, they did that for standard Chaos Space Marines.
With
And they
Night
did like a
Lords.
generic. No, no, no. Well,
Oh,
that was going to be my kind of
oh,
punchline to that was
sorry,
that they did
sorry,
a
Dan. Say that
generic.
again. What was that you said? I couldn't.
No, no, it's fine. It's fine. Don't worry. Don't worry. It's all good. All I was going to say is, yeah, but that's the interesting thing, isn't it? Because they did the standard Chaos Space Marine one, which was pretty rubbish, and then they did the Night Lords one, which was phenomenal. So it's interesting. So it's definitely not a one size fits all statement when I say things like the Infiltrator Kill Team was a bit mid because it was. But the thing is I think it's just all down to kind of execution. Like, yeah, sure, the Infiltrator Phobos Kill Team is a relatively underwhelming series of upgrades for a pretty, all right set of figures. Yeah, you can sort of dismiss that kind of Kill Team release as being underwhelming because most of them are, but then then they knock it out of the park and go, oh, by the way, here's the ugh, here's the Night Lords, which were so good,
Yeah,
so good.
it's interesting because obviously I mentioned it before. I feel like who knows how popular Kill Team is? It feels like it's really well supported because I imagine it sells well. But how many of
Of course,
those
it's
models are selling well because of 40k or because people are actually playing them in Kill Team? I suspect it's just because it's basically a vehicle for 40k minis. That's why people are buying them predominantly. I mean, it's not to say it's not a popular game, but I don't think it's anywhere near as popular as the sales figures would let you believe.
Oh yeah, I would say I'd say 2/3 of their sales, if not more, are going to Warhammer 40,000 players to play in their armies. Although obviously, let's not discount the actual, you know, Games Workshop's biggest seller still or biggest customer still is just generic hobbyists, collectors, painters, right? Like there's obviously these gaming communities, but there are people who are probably buying these figures regardless of what they're using them in. They're just going, cool, let's get hold of them so as I can paint them, build them. And to be fair, as like standalone little projects, they're actually really beautiful for that, right? Like if you can pick up, I forget how many henchmen were in a squad. I think it was like 10 or 8 or something.
For the, like the Inquisition?
Yeah, the Inquisitorial
I
henchmen,
want
they
to
were
say
quite
it was like
small.
12 because I think it was 6 and you got the sprue twice and each one did a duplicate pose.
Well, either way, the idea that you could literally build like a really nice little ensemble of characters and just be like, cool, I'm gonna build and paint those. I think that's just a really fun little hobby project for a lot of people. So maybe that also, yeah. So of the percentage of people who are buying this stuff to play it, So, which is probably a smaller percentage of the amount of people who are just buying them to paint them or collect them, build them, whatever. Yeah, of the percentage of people that are using it as a gaming piece, I would say, yeah, it's probably 2/3, if not maybe even 3/4 Warhammer 40,000 purchases. And then it really is unit dependent, right? Like, as Karsakin, I would say, is probably for every one person who buys a Karsakin squad to use in Kill Team, 100
Oh
people
yeah,
buy it to be used in
that
40k.
was hot prophecy in 40k. Like when that came out, it sold out immediately, 4 months, and people were just desperate to get hold of it because also the 40k rules for it were really good. And
They were hot.
it's a combination of A, they're cool models, B, they're also an iconic model and unit that hasn't been in the game for a while, so there's like a nostalgia element to it. And then C, the rules were just like busted good. So people were wanting them for all of those reasons, not just because they look nice to paint up.
Well, that's the thing, right? Because the Arbites were like a super
Oh
popular
yeah.
unit, not least because of the fact they were just a cool thing that we hadn't had for a while. But then obviously they turned into a 10-point unit that was like ridiculously efficient for the point. And it was like, oh, cool. I give you, I basically get a 10-man unit with 4 up armor saves and toughness 3 or whatever it was. Or maybe it was even whatever they were.
T3
They
it
were
would be. Yeah.
really, really good for little to no points. Yeah, so that was definitely a time where everyone was falling over themselves to buy RPTs for their Imperial allies and all the rest of it. I suppose that the other really weird thing as well is the way that they've kind of taken this hodgepodge of Imperial units and smashed them up into the Imperial Agents book and kind of just gone, oh yeah, this is how this works now, and you end up with a weird kind of mixture. But yeah,
Yeah, because it's interesting
I've just finally gone on.
because the newest models that have
Right.
come out, the sort of the servitors one, I was initially thinking, cool, I can buy that and I can run them in my guard army or I can run them in my space marine army, because both those armies have units of servitors, but I don't think you can. It's an AdMech only one because you've got the techno archaeologist in there plus some other tech priest type guy in there. And the unit's actually quite good. It can shoot and do actions at the same time, and I believe it can advance and do actions while it's being led by one of the tech priest people. So the 40k rules are pretty good, but it's just a shame it is only available for AdMech in particular, which I sort of get based on the people that are leading it.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, again, though, that kill team is interesting. I mean, it's because, yeah, it's cool because it's 90% new, awesome stuff. And then the fact that they've kind of gone, oh, we haven't sold enough of these techno archaeologists yet.
They've been trying for years.
To be fair, mate, I mean, it used to have exceptional rules. Do you remember when you couldn't buy it you couldn't buy anywhere because it was only available in like a Walmart exclusive or whatever?
What was that called? Something Arena. Yeah.
I tell you what, actually, on the topic of like exclusive miniatures and all the rest of it, it's been a really fallow couple of years for Warhammer events, hasn't it? In the sense that obviously everything's now going on in America, and you end up in these really annoying situations where it's like there's really cool event miniatures this year, specifically the Skaven Clawlord that I really want, and I can't flipping get it because I can't seem to. The stars haven't aligned and I haven't been able to be in America at the various locations
I think sometimes the Warhammer world occasionally have them, like probably at its anniversary or like their New Year's Day or something. But that's rare. Like it's like maybe 1 or 2 days a year when you can try and pick it up in the UK, because they just literally don't sell them at any of their other events, and Warhammer Fest isn't a thing. So yeah, it's a bit of a shame that. Obviously,
it's been weird, man. Like I was talking to my mate Sam, who
Nighthorn Sam.
Sam, yeah, absolutely. I was chatting to my mate Sam about it because he was a bit annoyed, really, because he is massively into competitive painting, right? So he's working really hard to massively improve in terms of his competition painting skills. I mean, he produces these phenomenal figures, and he's learning about like light reflections and all this other stuff. He's really pushing himself, but he's always annoyed because he's like, he's like, oh, I really want to enter Golden Demon, but to get out to Germany or
Yeah.
wherever it is to enter
There's
Golden
like one
Demon.
in Europe, one in America, and there hasn't been one in the. They occasionally do one in the UK, I'm sure, but I think maybe the last
I
one
think
was
the
in.
last UK one was 23. It was Warhammer Fest, wasn't it?
Yeah, I feel like there was one in between that, but and it was like super, like
No, you're
small or
thinking about the
last minute.
22 one they did in Warhammer
Yeah,
World. They did a Warhammer World in 22, and then they did it in Warhammer Fest in 23. And then since then, it's gone to Spiel or
yeah,
whatever it's called. I can't remember what the
yeah.
name
That's
of the
right.
thing is.
Spiel.
Um, yeah, but apparently Sam was saying to me, it was like, it cost you thousands to like get over there and do that, right? Like, because I mean, transport is not
Oh
cheap
yeah.
anymore. Getting on a flight to Germany, that's probably going to cost you the best part of like 300 quid because it's going to be quite
Yeah,
a busy time, even if you buy it in advance. Then you got to get a hotel, which is a fortune because obviously so many people go, because Spiel is such a huge event attracting hundreds of thousands of potential people from all across Europe. So that's all pretty crazy. And then it's like, and then you got to get like tickets for elongated periods because you got to submit your entries and give them multiple days
mm.
to work through the process. So it's that thing where it's like it's
It's
mad
also
when you think
like I
about
guess
it.
stiff competition as well because
Mm,
you're competing against everyone who can make it to that event in Europe. If they're like traditionally they'd be like, let's say there's one in Europe and one in the UK, so that sort of splits the competition up with mostly UK players and mostly Europe, and then the real pros will probably go to both to like double their chances, and you get that where people go to America and the UK and pretty much enter the same thing with occasional tweaks to it. And part of me doesn't begrudge them that because they spent hundreds of hours on it, although part of me does feel if you have entered one competition and not won stuff, like that was your shot, and unless you've drastically changed that
mm.
piece, I mean, you can't just change like the color of like, one glowing gem and be like, cool, yeah, I've modified it, so therefore I can resubmit it. Personally, it's like each, you get one entry per model, and that's it, no matter how long you spend on it.
I don't know about that necessarily, but I think at the end of the day, it's difficult, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, there's no real restriction on that, and I don't think there necessarily should be. I think if you've got something that you're proud of, I mean, don't get me wrong, that James Geezer from Siege Studio, he always used to do my nutting when he came to Warhammer World events back in the day because he would always enter the same Blood Angel captain that wasn't even in his army
So
in
yeah,
every
you're not talking
flipping.
about Golden Demon events. You're talking about just the Warhammer World weekend events, right? Where
Yeah,
yeah,
sorry,
so
yeah.
so in those
I'm rude
days
to
you used to
goalpost.
have a on Saturday it was the cabinet, so you could enter in models in different categories, and it was meant to be models from your army that you were playing with that weekend. You can put them in different categories, so and anyone could do it, right? There was no stipulation, so the cabinet was rammed full of probably 100 plus models for like characters, big monsters, vehicles, unit squad, for example. Like those are the categories, and you could enter in one thing of each. And I would always do that, and that was literally one of my favorite parts of the event was doing that. And then all the players get to vote on their favorite ones. And they've never done it since lockdown because it was just, I think, such a chaotic mess. And obviously, loads of people touching cabinets and things like that. They were all a bit like, oh, we don't want to spread germs afterwards. And then they've just, for whatever reason, gone, yes, it's still a lot easier to not do that and just do the armies and the cabinets on the Sunday instead.
Yeah, it probably just comes down to like a footfall thing where it's quite a major concourse within the Warhammer World setup, and since they've redesigned the space, it's much more kind of compact as towards where the cabinets are situated and where the traffic flows, I suppose. But I mean, look, that miniature that I was talking about there, by the way, I mean, it was a stunning miniature, painted super well. I think I even voted for it a couple of the times when I first saw it. It just got to the point where I saw it maybe like 3 or 4 times. I was like, oh, entering that again. Good, 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 good. Um, And again, obviously, it was being used in the same things. And again, it was that funny thing where I think actually, to his credit, I think he even ran it in his lists most of the time because it was back when the Smash captains were, the default thing. But it was always interesting to me that there was a lot of that where you saw some of the same stuff time and time again. And I think that's it. If you're traveling around to different events in different locations and you're bringing the same miniature, that's one thing. But to turn up to the same, it's like the geezer who always won. I think he's with I forget his name now, but he always won or did really well in Best Painted Awards at One World events, and I mean, again, and I think that's more of a failure of the format than him specifically. But it was always having really like, oh, the guy with the heavily saturated, bright neon Tau army that's all converted out of orc bits. Like,
or was it not?
and
Yeah,
again,
because the one I remember was there was like a Tyranid Tau conversion.
oh, it's Tyranids,
Tyranid Tau. And it was brightly painted, very eye-catching. Everything was converted. But we went to like 2 or 3 40k events in a row, and he was pretty much winning every single one with that same army. And yeah, maybe there was a bit of list variation, but part of me was like, yeah, I've seen this one before. Okay. Not to be begrudging, of course.
I think Paulie's gotten to that stage now with his Drakari, where people are so used to seeing it at events. He does really well in terms of like favorite army votes from players that played him, but doesn't necessarily do as well as he probably deserves in the cabinet side of things, mostly because people are like, I've seen this for like the 100th time.
It's like his one army.
You're right. Yeah. And the thing is, I think actually in a way kind of is to his detriment, because I actually think his army is increased, his technical
it's gotten better
aptitude
and better. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, it's gotten so much better. But I think because it's become that thing where it's like just become like white noise, because he's got so much of the same kind of tone and collection, you can't see the wood for the trees almost with it.
That's fair.
It's like anything, right?
I was going to say that's probably a bit like my Krieg army, where it sort of just all looks a bit samey to an extent, and there's not real differentiating pieces. But I can't remember his name, but there was a lovely guy I met multiple times, and I played him a couple of times. And every event he goes to, he paints up a brand new army for it. And he probably does at least 1 or 2 events a year. So he's painting up multiple 2,000 point armies a year to a super high standard. He pretty much always gets him a cabinet, and sometimes he wins, sometimes he doesn't. And I'm like, oh wow, that's really impressive, because every time I see him, he's showing me something new, and that's really impressive. It's always fresh, right? And that in itself is a spectacle as part of the armies on parade, so not armies on parade, the army sort of award process, is that you are seeing something new that you haven't seen before.
Why, indeed. But the next time you enter your Thunder Warriors into an event, your hope that people don't get bored of seeing them. Although
I've only seen half of it, so I haven't seen the whole thing together. Well, so that's the trick, maybe. But then, if I keep entering that in for like 4 or 5 times in a row, people will be like, yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, cool. Yeah, it's good, but I've seen it. Oh, this is new. This other one's new.
I think that's the thing, though. I think, obviously it's a massive undertaking, and someone like Paulie, who's kind of become a real specialist and collected what he's collected the way he has, I don't begrudge him for doing it that way. I think, but obviously, it'd be interesting to see him do something new, where he comes along with like a new army with a new theme and a new idea around it. I mean, I know he's really singly invested in the Sky Serpent and that whole kind of Drakari story, but I'd love to see him bring to life something else on the tabletop, because I think his kind of creativity and stuff could really do something interesting in that. And equally, I'm excited to see what you do next, Phil. I think that's always the thing. I was I know you're almost nearing the end of shed construction, so it might be time to learn what the next project is.
I may get the desk installed on the weekend as the plan. The electrics might not be a thing, but if I can at least be in there, I can do some probably modelling. So I've got a few projects coming up, so I'll rattle them off.
Rattle them off.
Nighthorn 2,000 points. I've got to get to.
Oh,
So for the bare minimum 2,000 points that I need is Kurdros, who's built. He just needs to be painted. He's the new Giran specific data sheet, and then a unit of 3 spirit hosts, which are also built. They just need painting. And also I'm going to add in the Lord Executioner model that's from the Underworld's Warband, the Headman's Chaos. He's already built and painted, so that's sort of like the main alteration to that list. And then I think that's it for those guys.
no Black Coach
Well,
madness.
I've got till August, and I don't think I could feasibly build and paint that, even though it's meant to be very good. I would.
Mate, it's extraordinary. The Black Coach is very strong.
Yeah, no, it seems popular. I could see why, but it also doesn't combo with my army, because my army is 90% horses. And the best thing about the Black Coach, or one of the best things about the Black Coach, is you can take a Black Coach specific detachment that gives infantry models a 5-up ward. But I don't have any infantry models in my army. I mean, I will have some, like a couple of characters and the Spirit Hosts, for example, and the Glaive Wraith Stalkers, but that's not enough. Whereas to really lean into it, you basically take 2 coaches, take that detachment, and everything else is infantry, and you just bubble up around those coaches if you're being super competitive. But that's not me. So yeah, the Black Coaches are. I will get that painted for at least hopefully sometime later in the year, where I can play it before that amazing data sheet disappears. And then the other thing I've probably got to the other thing I've probably got to get built and painted is Necromunda. So I signed up.
Oh yes, because you've signed up to do the
the
thingy.
So Spike is a friend of Richard, so he's running a Necromunda campaign. They ran one earlier in the year. Richard had some Escher gangs. He's going to sort of not resurrect them. It's like a new gang, but the same faction is what he's going with. I'm going to resurrect my old kill team. Funnily enough, that we've gone full circle. My Apostles of Thalos was my 2016 edition of Kill Team. They were a kill team that I built, converted from Renegade Militia Guardsmen, which was the old Cadian half bodies. The bottom half of the Cadians and the top half were the Forge World Renegade Militia minis. So I picked those up just as they were going out of production, and I made a kill team for them. And in those days, you could take the Renegade Guard with some Death Guard, but you can't do that in the current kill team. So I'm running them. My plan is to run them as the Blooded in Kill Team, because the models are similar, because they're Traitor Guardsmen, but I'm also going to run them as a Chaos Helots gang in Necromunda. So I probably need to either convert some of them up just to make sure they're all WYSIWYG, but I definitely need to start painting them at the very least. And then I've got myriad 40k plans. Who knows what that will be? But I feel like those 2 are my pressing ones to work on for events.
Well, it sounds like a very, very good set of priorities in that sense. And obviously it's cool that you got, various goals to work towards, which is cool. I myself at the moment are just finishing off a Skaven army, which I hope to take to Warhammer World in a month. So I've got a few little other bits to paint on that, but yeah, it's in terms of at least base coating it with things, it's not too shabby. So I'm just getting that all sorted out at the moment. I've got again, it's a very rough and ready paint scheme, but it'll do the job. And then I've got Joe commissioned on a Tomb Kings and received my first wave of Tomb King skellies. What Joe's done for me is the assembly and base coating. So they are, as they stand, an army that I can put down on the tabletop right now, but they're not necessarily exactly what I want in terms of the finished product, but they're tabletop ready, basically. What I basically now need to do is administer a kind of oil wash over all of them, and use the kind of technique of sort of top-down dilution, as it were. So
You're doing like
you know,
contrast paints for them, or
no. So the idea is at the moment is so what Joe's done for me is he's basically assembled them all, built them all, put all the primary colors on. Um, but at the moment they don't really have very much kind of definition. So like Joe hasn't really done any washes or anything like that on them. But the brief was kind of based on the idea is I'd take them from him and then I'd just basically over time layer in the
spruce
like
them
oil
up?
washes
Yeah.
and not necessarily spruce them up, more actually kind of grim dark them
Okay.
down, or streaking
Oh,
grime.
nice.
So that's the thing. So at the moment the basing material that we used, or I gave Joe to use, is very bright, but that was kind of on purpose because I wanted it to so it's like a sanding texture from AK Interactive, which is like a texture paint thing. It comes out very, very bright white snow, which is great. Not snow, sorry, bright
I
white
mean, snow
sand.
skeletons would be an unusual but quite cool theme.
Well, it's more, it's bony, kind of like sandy bone kind of color. But yeah, once I apply like the streaking grime to it, use the various spirits to kind of layer that down, I think the final effect will be pretty nice. And then once all that's done, I'll just put some grass tufts on, and then effectively I'll then go in and do some detail work on the front rank and file of particular units. But otherwise, it'll be a pretty painless kind of process of just doing the last little layer. But the cool thing is right now I'm at a point where I can actually put Warhammer Old World armies on the table, which I'm really excited about.
Cool.
Especially obviously now as we're in the throes of Cafe coming along, and that looks super cool.
Yeah, and we managed to convince, I think,
like
Richie to buy some. I think, I don't know if he's actually done it, but he seemed tempted.
Yeah, Richie's no, he has. That was me and Richie got together last Sunday to play some test games of AOS, and on the drive down, he bought loads of Cafe stuff. So yeah, we went down to Southampton to see Joe and Simon and play some games. So yeah, that was cool. But he bought a load of Cafe stuff on the way, which is great. And then obviously you've got your Chaos Dwarves when you finally get around to putting them together, which I'm super excited about. I think that's a project of yours that I'm really keen to see come to life at some point.
It was interesting. I was speaking to one of our, I think, listeners on Instagram, and basically he was complaining that the problem I have with Chaos Dwarves is the same that he has, and it's not easy to rebase them because the feet are too small to pin them, and pinning an entire army would be sort of madness. But also, Games Workshop don't make slaughter bases in the new sizes, so you either have to go third-party slaughter bases, old bases with base extensions. Basically, you can't easily change the base size without using third-party stuff. So you basically have to embrace some other company to sort out your basing needs.
Yeah, that was my solution for my Tomb Guard unit. So I actually picked up at Salute in 24. I picked up a full regiment of old school metal Tomb Guard. And I had to rebase all of them, so I had to go to a third party supplier because, like you say, same problem. Because it's all old metal slot bases and things. So that's how I did it. But they're perfectly fine. I mean, once they're in a movement tray, it all looks the same. That's the thing.
True.
Like, once it's all down in those movement trays, no one ever really notices. Yeah, sure, if you're going to use them as like skirmishers or maybe individual monsters. But then obviously individual monsters wouldn't have that problem anyway because they're quite different.
The only one that's really weird is the Bull Centaurs. The new base size is big. It's basically so big it dwarfs the old metal Bull Centaurs because they're designed for the Forge World Bull Centaurs, which got massive upscaling. So they're not on just cavalry bases; they're on like monstrous cavalry bases, which are literally you
Oh,
could probably fit a whole unit on just one base if you change your orientation around. So yeah, that's like a weird workaround where you probably just got to use a different style base and hope no one cares too much to be a stickler for the rules.
well, I mean, at the end of the day, mate, I mean, yeah, the way I'd probably do it in those instances is if it's purely for gameplay purposes, just put them on an extender, like, just cut them out and put them on it, or even just put them, on a movement tray, or even just on a piece of cardboard. Like if it really matters from a gameplay perspective, that's fine. Like at the end of the day, if I've just got to get a cornflakes packet and cut out the right size square to put them on, so be it. But ultimately, yeah, in terms of actually like building, painting, collecting, owning the miniature, having it as a artifact, as a piece of memorabilia, totally put them on the old base sizes. Don't put them on the new. Ultimately, you don't want it looking ridiculous, like yeah, like a tiny
Yeah.
little thing in a mass of grass or whatever. That sounds
Yeah,
terrible.
because I sort of feel like people give maybe more credit than Games Workshop deserves when they think, well, it's got to be on this particular base size. And to be honest, I think this is the same with base size differences in AOS and 40K. It's like if it's a base size up or down, it doesn't make a difference. It's not really being play tested with a particular base size in mind. And the general impression I got with the old world is they're pretty much making the new sizes up. I doubt they would have play tested every single unit on the new base size to make sure it was all correct and in order. And it's like, yeah, maybe over time that will slowly happen, but it's like, cool, if you're gaining an extra few millimeters here and there over the course of the game, I feel like it all shakes out as being, yeah, sometimes it's beneficial to you, and then other times it's a detriment to you because sometimes you can shoot slightly further, and then other times someone's charging you much easier. So it sort of all works out fine in the end, as long as you're not taking a complete mick. I think it's yeah, as long as they're not on like a pie plate, you'll be fine.
Yeah, totally right. Like there is definitely degrees of acceptability when it comes to a lot of this stuff. But there we go. It's late. It's now midnight here in glorious Oslo. So I'm gonna call time because I worry more about talking too loudly and disturbing other patrons of this fine establishment. So there you go. That was whatever we ended up talking about in episode 208. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you again to all our patrons. Thank you again for liking and subscribing. And apologies to those of you who've left us 5-star reviews. We'll get around to it next time. But yeah, final thoughts, Phil.
Kill Team seems fun. However, the rules in terms of their layout are a complete hot mess. And maybe I'll get to talk about that another time. But I've enjoyed the chat that we've had so far.
I have too, Phil. You're very special to me. Thank you.
Thank you. You're somewhat special to me too.
Hey, there we go. Hugs and kisses all round. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye. Bye-bye.
Bye bye bye.
Bye.